Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me and my very special guest. She has an illustrious career, and she's one of Broadway world's favorites. You know her from such musicals as Falsettos, Mamma Mia, and Parade, and most recently from her triumphant turn as Dolly Levi in the national tour of Hello, Dolly. And currently, she is one of the stars of the new series, A Killer Party Murder Mystery Musical. Please say hello to my friend, Carolee Carmello.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Richie.
How are you? First of all, how are you and where are you?
I am doing okay. I am home in New Jersey and, you know, doing what everybody else is doing, just kind of trying to make the days pass and keep myself busy so I won't go crazy like everybody else.
Because this is our 167th day in quarantine.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
Well, I do this every time I sit with someone because doesn't it feel like yesterday? Sometimes it just started, then it seems like a year ago.
Yeah, it seems right. It seems like it just happened, but also it seems like we've been doing this forever. So I hope everybody's hanging in there. I mean, it's so hard. It really is so hard. And I know, you know, people are struggling in all different ways, financial and emotional and, you know, and feeling lonely. And I just hope everyone's doing okay. It's a really hard time. So just know you're not alone.
Beautiful. How are you handling and dealing with this pandemic as it progresses?
I guess I've been just trying to stay busy-ish so that, you know, the days don't become kind of, you know, a mush. Trying to exercise, trying to, you know, connect with friends in safe ways. You know, I went up and visited, you were talking about Dolly. I went to visit John Bolton at his house outside the city. And we had a nice, safe visit on his porch. You know, I have a couple of friends that I talk to or text regularly. So just trying to stay connected and stay connected with my kids and that kind of thing. I think the same as everybody's doing.
Yeah. So where were you on March 12th when the New York theater and the whole shutdown began? Did you just close the day before with Dolly?
No, we were open in Buffalo. So because we were in New York State, we didn't have any choice. When the governor shut everything down, we were in Buffalo. And so we didn't even have 24 hours notice. In fact, I don't know if people were following my Instagram videos, but I was shooting that last video where I did the bicycle picture of Carol Channing, and we were shooting that in the morning. And I was doing all kinds of crazy things. I had rented a bike, and I was, you know, dragging my dresser and my wardrobe person with me to film. It was crazy. And right after that happened, I went back to my hotel. And we got a call late in the afternoon from the stage managers to come in for a company meeting. And, you know, when you get that company meeting call, it's never good. So we thought they were going to say, we're going to close at the end of the week or, you know, or something like that. But they said, this is it. We're not even doing a show tonight. Get your stuff out of your dressing room right now. Go home tomorrow. Bye. And it was very abrupt because we didn't even get to have that like, oh, this is our last show and, you know, kind of say goodbye to all our favorite moments along the way. And it was kind of, you know, devastating like everybody else's experience.
See, I didn't realize. I thought you would have had that final closure. So, I mean, there you were, you packed your bags, you came home. I mean, you were on such a high from this incredible tour you had just done. Did it hit you right away? I mean, no one knew what this pandemic was going to be. So you pack your bags, you come home. What were those first few weeks like for you?
I think I was still hoping that it wouldn't last as long as it has, obviously. I had been scheduled to do an off-Broadway show this summer, a new Michael John LaCusa piece with Javier Muñez, and I was really looking forward to that. We were going to do this 2-character musical, a really sweet show that I had done a reading of. And I thought, well, maybe, you know, we don't start rehearsals until the end of June, and then the run is July and August. So in March, we didn't know, we were still sort of naive about how long it would last. So I was thinking, all right, I'll have a little break and then I'll start rehearsals for that. But as it turned out, that got canceled along with everything else. So, take it day by day, I guess.
Yeah. What has amazed you the most and what has frustrated you the most during this ongoing pandemic and the shutdown?
I guess I've been amazed at how creative people are, about trying to find ways to make art and entertain people during all this. I mean, that's been pretty amazing to me. What was the other adjective you used?
What has frustrated you the
frustrated
most?
Me? Gosh, I guess just not being able to see people. I want to visit. My mom and dad are older, and I'd like to go and see them all the time. And I've made a few visits where we just sort of sit in the backyard and stay far apart. But I worry about them because they're both about 80, and that's a dangerous age for this disease. And yeah. I don't want to bring any contaminants into their environment. So that's been frustrating, I guess, having to stay away from family.
Yeah. With everything happening to our country during this pandemic, with people speaking out about racial injustice and Black Lives Matter, would you just talk about the importance of this upcoming election in November and how important it is for people to register and vote and how one voice can make a change?
Oh, my goodness. Well, of course, in every election, you should always vote. I mean, that's your right as a citizen. And if we don't utilize that voice, we can't really criticize the people that are in office. If we don't take the time and the energy to make our voices heard. But this time around, I feel like it's even more crucial than it has ever been in my lifetime to just express how we feel about what's going on in our country. I mean, I don't want to espouse any particular political point of view because I don't know, we have lots of viewers who may have differing opinions, but please make sure you're registered. I know a lot of people who think they're registered and then they find out at the last minute that they're not. So just check and make sure you do it, you get out to vote safely. I know there are lots of controversial, things right now about mail-in ballots and stuff like that. But if you can safely get to your polling place, do that, make your voice heard. It's just, they keep saying it's for the soul of our nation, which I really believe it is.
Beautifully put. Thank you for that. You just finished a triumphant national tour of taking on the iconic role of Dolly Levi in Hello, Dolly. I mean, the Jerry Herman, Michael Stewart. It's a musical masterpiece. Dolly is one of my all-time favorite shows, and you received incredible glowing notices. How magical was it playing Dolly and doing that show?
Oh, well, you saw the show so many times with every different Dolly imaginable. It's just so well written, and Jerry Zach's direction was so, quick and smart. And, it just was, it was really like being a part of something so perfectly constructed that you almost didn't have to work hard for it to be successful. I mean, when things are well written like that and well directed, you just have to show up and it carries you along. And the audiences loved it, which was so gratifying. I mean, everywhere around the country that we played, we got such a nice response, and our company was lovely, and I was having a blast until we were, sent home.
Yeah. How did the tour come about for you?
I had auditioned originally when they were looking for someone to do that one night that Bet wasn't going to do. And I had worked with Jerry a couple of times before, Addams Family and Sister Act. So I guess he had me in mind. And when Betty was finishing up her year on the road, they called me. So I was thrilled. I mean, it wasn't a show that I had ever done before. I mean, I was familiar, like we all are, with some of the songs, but I really didn't know how funny it was and how clever. I mean, the Thornton Wilder monologues that are just so touching. And it's a beautiful story. And I felt really, really lucky to get that part.
Yeah. You know, do you remember your first performance when you come out on a little trolley and you lower the newspaper? Like, tell us about that, like that first time. Okay.
Well, first of all, I opened in Kansas City, which is an outdoor theater. I don't know, probably a lot of your viewers are from that area, so you're familiar with it, but that was unlike anything else that the tour had ever done. So all of us were kind of like, what's happening? We're outside. And we had only rehearsed for about 3 weeks. And here we are, like, doing this thing outside. And then we had terrible weather. I remember that week was just terrible. We had to cancel, like, I don't know if it was the first show or the second show. They sent me out for the end of Act 1. And they said, you're not going to have a spotlight because there's lightning and we have to take the guys down from the spot tower. So you won't have a spotlight. So just try to stay, as close to the edge of the passerelle as you can.
So people can see you.
Now, if it's too dangerous for them, how about me out there? And then I finished the number and they said, okay, that's it. We're not doing the second act because it was thunder and lightning. And I was like, what? I think we had only done one show at that point. It just felt so strange. I mean, I think when we got to our second city, which was St. Louis, we started to settle in a little bit. But yeah, that first week was pretty chaotic.
Because Debbie Reynolds told me that story. A lot of Broadway shows would shut down for a week in August during the 70s. They'd go to the Muni.
Oh.
And they did that with Irene, with Debbie Reynolds. They did it with Seesaw, with Michelle Lee and John Gavin. But Debbie said, I think it rained a lot of the performances there. It was crazy.
Wow, I didn't realize that. But of course, they have that little museum with, faces of all the famous people that have played that theater. It's pretty, you feel like somebody had, you feel like the ghosts of theater past on that stage for sure.
Yeah. So how glorious was it singing Jerry Herman's score?
Oh, it was so great. I mean, I've had so much luck in my life, in my career, to sing great music by lots of new composers. But this is, a classic. It's like Broadway history. And I felt really fortunate. And of course, Jerry passed away during our run. Yeah. So that was, really emotional for all of us because we felt like he was out there in the world, even though he hadn't been well enough to come see the show. We knew that he was out there and we sort of felt his energy, but then he was gone suddenly and it just felt like such a loss. We had a little moment of silence for him before one of the performances, but yeah, that score is just, it's glorious. I mean, there's not a clunker in the bunch, really.
It's so funny because we want to thank you officially here at Broadway World for what you gave the living room concerts for us, because you like Alan had asked you for something very small and you gave this beautiful, beautiful rendition of Before the Parade Passes By, which we all need. I mean, just
in my pajamas.
In your pajamas. But it must have been so glorious night after night to say those beautiful speeches written by Thornton and Michael Stewart, that flawless book, into that incredible number. I mean, it must have been so great for you.
That number was so satisfying, and it had the perfect ramp up into it with that monologue. It just, it was just like a perfect piece of musical theater art.
You have joined such an amazing list of ladies who have played Dolly. I mean, with everyone, I can't mention everybody, but it's Carol Channing to Ethel Merman, Ann Miller, Pearl Bailey, Eve Arden, Yvonne DiCarlo, Bette Midler, Bernadette Peters, Ginger Rogers, Betty Grable, Martha Ray, Phyllis Diller. I mean, what I love about you is I loved following your journey across the country because you would take an iconic picture of one of the Dollys and you would duplicate that. And you brought so much joy to so many of us theater fans. I want to thank you for that too.
I'm so glad everybody was enjoying that. It was really fun for me. And I got so involved in it. Like, it became this obsession. Like, who am I going to do next? And I got people backstage involved and we had a lot of fun putting those together. So I'm glad people enjoyed it.
I mean, when you listen to that list, was it ever daunting to you at any time saying, oh my gosh, all these people have done this before me?
Yes, of course. I mean, even just one iconic person like Carol Channing, or, you know, I mean, in this production, Bette Midler. So yes, I felt incredibly responsible to lift the show up in the way that they had all done. And of course, you know, you want to do the best you can do and not copy anyone, but also pay tribute to everyone. It's, you know, it's a lot of pressure, but it also was such an honor, you know, to be on that list of people that you just said. I really felt really lucky every day. And to have John Bolton, who played opposite me, he was just so wonderful in the role and so fun to play with on stage. That was a big part of it too.
Well, I want to mention John Bolton. I'm the head of his fan club. I adore John Bolton. I mean, I just think he is just the best. He gave you a very special gift opening night. What did he give you?
Well, he, unbeknownst to me, he had a neighbor who had some connection to Carol Channing, and the neighbor, I guess, was cleaning out some stuff and gave John some memorabilia. And John passed on to me two things, actually, a program that was signed by Carol Channing, and then this little cameo pin, which I still have, that she wore on her costume in the show. And I found a place on one of my costumes to wear it in the hat shop scene. And it felt like I had some of her spirit with me all the time. It was a really special gift.
You know, going back to the list of these ladies, everybody who played Dolly made it their own. Like you said, it's beautifully structured musical, so you can bring something of your own. Is there something special you wanted to bring to the role, or now that it's over the run, you look back and say, wow, I brought this to what I wanted to give Dolly?
Oh gosh, I guess I want, you know, it always amazed me, especially when I was doing those tributes, that the same words and the same notes could feel so different coming out of different, you know, bodies. And I guess what I wanted to do was make space for her vulnerability in a way. I mean, you think of Dolly as this big sort of larger than life, you know, bombastic presence. But I was so impressed with those small moments when she's speaking to her late husband, and you really get to see sort of the soft underbelly of Dolly. So I guess that's what I was hoping I did. I'm not sure how successful I was, but I feel like that was important to balance out her big brassy side with, you know, what the facade is covering, you know, and her struggles and her pain underneath.
Well, you did that because I saw you.
Oh, thanks.
You know, I love mishaps during shows because shows are all live. Did you have a big mishap with a curtain at the end of Act 1?
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. I forgot about that. I was doing the end before the parade passes by, which is a big number at the end of Act 1. And I'm standing sort of on the edge of the stage, kind of in line with the final curtain, which comes in at the end of the act when I'm further upstage. And the whole cast is behind me. And all of a sudden I sort of felt this like shadow, you know, when something's like about to fall, you don't really see it, but you somehow feel a shadow coming. And I was like, that's funny. I wondered maybe one of the lights went out. And then all of a sudden I feel this weight on my head, and it kind of, this giant velvet curtain, which was not supposed to come down until the end of Act 1, started coming down. The guy just jumped the cue. I mean, it was just a human error, but I was still singing, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? What's happening? At first I thought it was maybe one of the, because everyone behind me was carrying like banners and stuff, and I thought maybe someone dropped their sign and it's hitting me. Like, All these things that happened in the split second. And so I kind of climbed out from under it as it was coming down. And so then I was by myself with the curtain behind me. And I was like, how am I going to finish? As I'm singing the whole time, I'm singing and I'm singing. And I'm like, how am I going to get off the stage? I'm in front of the curtain. And then at some point, I guess it went back up because I felt all the people behind me moving forward. But luckily, no one got hurt. That's the good news. But it was really, it was a scary moment.
Well, I'll tell you, every Dolly had one of those moments because we saw Bette Midler one night and she went up on Before the Parade Passes By, laid on the stage, said, honey, I'm old. And the audience went crazy. So, I mean, and talk about channeling Carol Channing. In Lorelei, she closed the first act with a number called Men, and the curtain travels in, and she goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and she pulls herself out from under the curtain to sing that number. So you got to look at that on the Tony. So
oh my God, I had no idea.
That's one of your Channings. Carol Channing was channeling you, and she gave you a Dolly moment, just so you know, on this tour.
God. Thank you, Carol.
I'll tell you. Listen, one of your current projects is the hilarious, silly, and really clever new virtual online series called A Killer Party, a murder mystery musical. It features a book by Kate Kerrigan and Rachel Axler. It's a score by Jason Howland and Nathan Tyson, and it's directed by Mark Broody. I mean, before we start talking about that, Alan, would you run a clip from A Killer Party? Everyone.
Where to begin when you write a memoir? Must you go all the way back? Surely you skip a few disgraces, cases you failed to crack. Where to begin when you write a memoir? Probably with your big break. A crime scene full of theater people, they're the worst. Make no mistake. The Sleuth in
That is brilliant.
I'm sitting in the exact same spot, too.
How much fun was it filming that and doing that?
Fun, yes, but it was hard. I mean, all of us, I was so impressed with all the actors in this piece because we're all stuck in our houses and trying to create something. They gave us lots and lots of instructions. And I'm not a technical genius when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I'm older than most of those people. So it was challenging. I had to get my son involved and my ex-husband involved. And, a lot of people helped me get through it. But the material is really funny. I mean, I didn't really get to see any of it until it was released, in the last couple of weeks. And I was so impressed. Really funny stuff.
Tell everybody who you play.
Okay, so Jessica Keenan Wynn plays a detective in this murder mystery, and I play her older self. So it's kind of, the Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote kind of character. And I'm trying to write my memoir, and she's, going through the investigation in real time, but I'm remembering back. So there's lots of clips of me trying to, like you just saw, trying to come up with stuff to write and procrastinating.
It's so clever.
Yeah, right? I was amazed. And that number, I don't know if you've watched the whole thing, but there's a number that Jeremy Jordan sings that just killed me. it's just so funny. And the cast, I mean, they got like amazing people to do this.
Including you.
Well, I don't know how many people I was. I didn't do all that much, but some of these people, I mean, they, you know, they had entire things filmed in there, and it was so clever the way they set it up, because in the story, the detective sends everyone to a room to be isolated. So everyone was in one room, you know, Drew was in his kitchen, and I don't know. Yeah. Everybody was in a different room, and it felt like it was all in one big house. So I thought it was really cleverly done. I was glad to be a part of it, even though it was a lot harder than Jason said it was going to be when he called me.
You know, I spoke to Michael Urie too, and Michael's like, Richie, I'm a producer now. I'm a director. I'm a stage manager. I'm a grip. You know, you take on all these things.
Lighting designer, sound design. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think I'm appreciating more and more what all those people do. You know, when you're filming something and all you have to do is show up and say your lines. Now, you know, we have to do everything. It's not so fun. I didn't really want to be all those things when I was, you know, starting out in this business, but I guess we don't have a choice right now.
Well, now you can add all these things to your resume. You can add them all to your resume. All these special skills, lighting designers, you know, techie, all this stuff. So there was never a point during this musical you were all on a screen together, or were you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they had a moment at the beginning of the story where they're all sort of sitting down to dinner, and they really cleverly, like they were clinking glasses with the person in the next screen. Laura Osnes was staying with oh gosh, with I'm going blank. Yeah. But the two of them were together, and I don't think any of the other people, in fact, Jessica said she didn't even have anyone to help her film. She was all by herself trying to set up a tripod for every single shot. And that's, you know, a nightmare.
It's so brilliant. I mean, like you said, none of us see the behind the scenes. It's so beautifully edited. Like you said, the cast of this show is the best of Broadway. And I mean, it must have been great for you to be a part of something like brand new voices, the writers and the people who wrote the score and the lyrics. I mean, they so thought outside of the box. It's so brilliant.
Yeah, Jason really, I mean, he had this master plan that it would be, you know, a way to get all these Broadway people, you know, involved in something from their own homes, which is, you know, I was sort of giving up at that point. I was like, I guess we're not going to do anything. And he was like, we want to be part of this. And of course, Nathan Tyson, who wrote the lyrics, he wrote Tuck Everlasting. So I knew how brilliant he was, but lots of other people involved, especially the editors you just mentioned. I mean, the editing is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really brilliant. So I want to tell our audience again, the cast album just came out on August 21st. Oh, yeah, it's brilliant. And you can stream the 9 episodes. Each episode of A Killer Party Murder Mystery Musical is approximately 6 to 8 minutes in length, with over 80 minutes of content, plus bonus behind-the-scenes footage, including bloopers. Hopefully there'll be a Carolee setting up all of her stuff in her dining room. Cut material, interviews with the cast, and more. A Killer Party hopes to entertain the masses until Broadway returns. Everyone just go to akillerpartymusical.com for all the information. It is brilliant. You know, you have such a brilliant, beautiful career. As I was researching, I mean, I know all your stuff, but I was trying to put it into like some kind of order. I was like, she's worked with some incredible, not only actors, directors, composers, book writers. So we're going to go through some of the highlights. We have another 30 minutes, which will fly by really fast. And just tell me what comes to mind, a story or a great memory. Many people were supposed to make their Broadway debuts this spring, and then the pandemic hit. And I hope that they all get to do this when the theater comes back bigger and better than ever. But Broadway debuts are really special. And yours was in the Cy Coleman, David Zippel, and Larry Gelbart musical, City of Angels. What do you remember about your Broadway debut, Carolee, and that fabulous musical?
Oh my gosh. I only had one line in the whole show. I played Margaret the Maid. I tell this story in concert sometimes because you know in the song Broadway Baby, she sings, heck, I even play the maid to be in a show. Well, that's That was my Broadway debut. I played the maid to be in the show. And I had one line, and I came out, and Dee Hoty was playing this like grande dame, rich society lady. And I just said, there's a Mr. Stone to see you, ma'am. That was my entire part. So it was a little frustrating to not get to do anything like spectacular in my Broadway debut, but I did get to go back to the show later after I left and went on tour with Chess, and then I came back and I played Uli, which was the part that Randy Graff originated. So that was so much fun. That show, those arrangements, oh my God. I remember in the Sitzprobe when we first heard the band play those songs. Unbelievable. I think there's got to be a revival of that show soon.
Yeah. Brilliant. Did you, like, during rehearsals, you're like, maybe I'll say my line this way. Maybe I'll change it for a matinee. Maybe I'll add something that's going through, right? I mean, I didn't realize that.
You just want to make your mark. Maybe a mole. Maybe I'll turn sideways. Yeah.
Sounds like an I Love Lucy episode or something.
It's true. It's true. What can I do with one line? Yeah.
Well, listen, then you played Cordelia in the landmark William Finn and James Lapine musical Falsettos. How life-changing was that role and that show for you?
That show really did change a lot of lives. I mean, it was so powerful. I was just talking about this the other day. Just the emotional experience of that show was unlike anything else I had been through. And it was, I know a lot of people probably saw the revival, but when we did the show all those years ago, all those deaths and all that heartache was so fresh. It was really hard for people to watch that show and not weep. I remember people sitting after the show had finished and not being able to get up out of their seats because they were just devastated. I mean, it was all really that close to the surface. We had all lost a lot of people. And the show, the thing about Bill Finn is that he has this amazing ability to make things really funny and then sort of slip in this devastating emotional, heart underneath it. I think that's such a unique skill, to be able to combine humor and to bring people to the edge of those emotions with humor. I just think that's, I've always admired him for that. And I got to do, other material of his, and he's brilliant.
That is James Lapine and that cast.
Oh my God, I know. And it was a conglomeration because a lot of the people had done the show off Broadway, or the two shows. It was a combination of March of the Falsettos and March of the Falsettos and Falsetto Land. Yeah. And it had only been combined recently before the Broadway production by Graziella Danielle in this Connecticut production. And then they brought it to Broadway. And so some of the people had done the show before. Everyone had done the show before except me. Yeah. So I had to play catch up for a while, but boy, was I lucky to be in that company. Yeah.
You got to play Abigail Adams in Roundabout's production of 1776. It's one of my favorite musicals, and people who know me know that I like the big glitzy sequin. I like Lacage and Mame and Dolly, but 1776 is one of my favorite all-time musicals. So it's one of yours too.
Absolutely. Is it because we watched it on TV when we were kids? I mean, I
went to Radio City when I was in school. They took us to Radio City to see it on the big screen. I was like, I didn't want to live in that time, but I was like, I could live in that time and be a part of that show and sign the Declaration. I love that musical.
You would look good with one of those ponytails, Richie.
A ponytail, totally, and those shoes that had the big buckle on it. And one of those pens, it looked like a big feather. They signed the Declaration. And from Long Island, Richard Ridge. But you loved playing Abigail, didn't you?
I loved everything about that show.
Yeah.
I have always loved that show. It just, I don't know, it just touches me so much. And yeah, I felt really grateful to be part of that revival. And then a couple of years ago, they did this all-female version of the show at 54 Below, and I got to play John Adams, which was, really my dream role. I mean, I watched William Daniels play that part growing up, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So, you know, to be able to play Abigail and John Adams, you know.
I love that. That's a full circle moment.
It was, yeah.
You know, then you did Marguerite in Scarlet Pimpernel. Were you part of Pimpernel 3.0?
Yes, 3.0. Well, I did all the workshops and stuff before the Broadway production, but then they didn't hire me to open the show on Broadway, which was, you know, really sad for me. But I got to do it at the end of the sort of journey of the show. It had changed. I don't know how much people know about that show, but it changed like 3 times. And when we did it, actually moved to a different theater. It moved from the Minskoff to the Neil Simon, and a whole new cast. And yeah, it was fun. Ron Bomer and Mark Kudish. Yeah, we had a great time.
Such a glorious show. I've seen every incarnation, and I saw the recent big concert production where Frank and Nan wrote some new stuff for it too. They change it all the time.
Really? I didn't see that one.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love that show. It's just a glorious, big, splashy musical. Really, really great.
Yeah, it's like a romance novel on stage.
Oh. You created the role of Lucille Frank, which garnered you incredible acclaim opposite the late, great Brent Carver, who played your husband, Leo Frank, in the Jason Robert Brown and Alfred Ury musical Parade, one of my all-time favorite musicals. You worked for one of the greatest directors of all time, Harold Prince. How life-changing was that show for you, that company and that role?
Wow, that really was, that was the big turning point for me. That was the first time I ever originated a role on Broadway and got to sort of carry it from the first reading through all the, you know, pre-Broadway stuff. We went to Canada and did a workshop up there. And then this, you know, I almost didn't get cast, but then I did get cast. And so it was a dream come true. I remember the first day of rehearsal at Lincoln Center when we finally, you know, were finally going to do it on Broadway. And because I knew most of my music, they sent me home pretty early in the day. And I remember standing in the hallway and just like putting my ear to the door and listening to them sing The Old Red Hills of Home and just sobbing. I was so grateful that we were finally going to get to do it in New York. And I wish it had gone on forever, but what an experience. And like you said, Hal and Brent, who unfortunately we lost a few weeks ago. He was really brilliant.
So I was going to ask you, I knew Brent from Parade, and I also knew him very well for Kiss of a Spider Woman.
Sure.
And I mean, what a brilliant soul. Not only one of the most talented people, but a glorious soul. What was it like sharing the stage with Brent Carver?
Well, I was just always amazed at his sort of creativity in this. I mean, he really created something that, I mean, of course it's brilliant on the page, but he brought so much depth to it. And just watching him perform every night was like a masterclass, because you just felt like there was so many different levels going on in his, you know, in his psyche. And because the role is so interesting and then he's so interesting, it just became this, you know, it was just glorious to watch and to sing with him. His voice was phenomenal. I mean, to have someone who's that good an actor, but also an amazing voice. So when we got to sing the duet at the end of All the Wasted Time, it was, you know, it just was one of the best sort of artistic experiences of my life. And the scene that led up to it, that picnic scene that Alfred Ury wrote, I mean, it's just, the whole thing was just so beautiful.
And then there was working with one of the greatest directors and producers of all time, Harold Prince. Favorite memories of working with Hal?
He just had so much energy, you know. He was so bubbly in real life too. I mean, when I would see him years after Parade, he just had this sort of childlike energy that was infectious. You know, he loved the theater so much, and he loved talking about it, and he loved starting a new project, and he had a passion for it that very few people that I've ever encountered have. Maybe you, Richie, you're one of the few. You just seem to love every part of it and just love hearing about it and talking about it. And, you know, he just was like that. And so being in the rehearsal room with him, it was It was fun. I mean, he had a large sort of vision of the show. I mean, I didn't work with him on other shows, but for that show, he knew visually what he wanted, but he gave the actors a lot of freedom. And if he didn't like what you were doing, he made sure to tell you that. But otherwise, he kind of let you go and discover. And that's always, you know, gives you a great sense of freedom.
He was so sweet to me. He was a big supporter of mine all through what I did. I mean, he was just, and I got to sit with him. He did one of the last in-depth interviews with me before he passed away, which was so, because I always wanted to sit with Hal in depth. And we sat for 90 minutes when his book came out, and it was just absolutely brilliant in front of a live audience. And it's something I will never forget. God. Yeah. You know, then you stepped into the role of Lily and Catherine in Cole Porter's Kiss Me Kate opposite Burke Moses. I mean, you living in the world of Cole Porter in that role, how great was that?
Well, first of all, I had just had a baby. My son was, when they called me to see if I wanted to take over for Marin, I was, I think, like 7 months pregnant. And I was like, when exactly do you want me to start this? So the timing was a little tricky because I had just given birth, I think 7 weeks before. And I started rehearsals, and I was, of course, exhausted, as anyone who, you know, has a new baby knows. But the show was beautiful, and I was really thrilled to go into it. And of course, during that run was when the attacks happened on the World Trade Center. So we were, you know, shut down for a little while, and then came back, and then we were going to shut down again, and then we, you know. It was a really emotional time for all of us, and everyone on Broadway at the time, I think, because it was just a strange, not unlike today, you know, where you feel like the city has changed and you don't really know what's going on, and you want things to get back to normal. I mean, it was similar in a lot of ways to what we're going through now.
Yeah, I totally forgot you just had a baby, so you must have been going through all of that. Then the attacks and the opening and closing. Wow, what a time.
Yeah, I feel like I was running on during that whole year.
Totally. Then you went to Urinetown. How much fun was that, playing Penelope?
Oh, my God. I think that's the funniest show I've ever seen or done. God, it's so brilliant. It really is so funny. I just remember when they called me to audition, and I looked at that music and I was like, what is that note at the end of Privilege to Be? And they were like, well, you know, Nancy Opal, she has this, like, you know, crazy trick voice. I was like, I don't know if I could do that. So I worked on it for a little while and found a place to put that note, and got cast in the role. And God, was that fun. So funny. And people just loved it. I mean, it was wall-to-wall laughter, that show.
You know, you talk about auditioning. We have so many actors who are watching this around the world at every parts of their career. And they say things to me like, you know I'm good at what I do, but I freak out at auditions, or I'm not really good at auditioning. Are you good at auditioning? Do you like auditioning?
Oh, does anybody like auditioning? I guess there's probably one person who likes it, but you know, it's so stressful. I just always say to people, you know, just know that it's not just you. It's an awful, awful experience to walk into an audition room, because you just feel so vulnerable. You know, you don't have the security of the lights where we can't see the faces, and you don't have your costume, and you don't have any of the trappings. It's just you exposed, and you don't know the material that well if you're learning something for the audition. It's just awful. It's awful. So to everyone who's going through that or about to go through it, I feel your pain. And the only thing I say to people who are, you know, struggling with it is, the more prepared that you feel, the less nervous you'll be when you walk in the room, because you have to kind of forget everything and just try to be present, which is really hard to do because there's so many, you know, stressors in that situation. It's a completely different skill set from actually working on a show. You know, once you get the job, it's very different, but the auditioning, I still have to do it. You know, people ask me all the time, well, you don't have to audition anymore. Yeah, of course I do. And it's nobody enjoys it. But you have to also remember that the people on the other side of the table are rooting for you. You know, they want you to do well. So sometimes I try to remember that when I'm walking in the room, so I don't feel like I'm walking into a room full of enemies, you know?
That's fabulous. Beautifully put. It's like you don't feel like you're walking the plank when you open that door.
Yeah, I mean, you do still kind of, but at least you're walking the plank with friends around you.
Totally. You know, you have quite a history with the sensational ABBA musical, Mamma Mia. Playing Donna. I mean, how fabulous was that, singing that music and living in the world of Mamma Mia?
Oh my God, people love that show so much. And I did that show longer than I've done anything else. So it has a special place in my heart. But what a workout that show is. You know, I was the thinnest I ever will be when I was doing that show, because it was like doing an aerobics class every night and singing while we were doing it, and in platform boots, no less. Yeah. That show opened right after September 11th, and it was one of those sort of like just joyful, silly, colorful spectacles that I think people are going to want when this all sort of wraps up and we get back to Broadway. I think that's the kind of show people are going to be looking for again. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Mamma Mia revival.
Oh, bring it back. you know, my husband Preston and I over here, this poster Lestat, loved you numerous times in Lestat.
I saw that Lestat poster behind you. I was like, of all the shows.
Well, some of your stuff is in, some of my window cards are in storage. I'm like, I got to have some stuff. But of course, Dolly, I look at every day. Dolly sits out. But I'm like, what was it like singing the songs of Elton John? I mean, seriously, I mean, talk about a showstopper he gave you.
That score is really good. I'm still sad that they didn't release the recording of it, because we went into the studio and recorded the whole thing, and then they never released it, which makes me sad. I think, you know, as many faults as that show had, and we all know it had some faults, there were some beautiful songs, and I got to sing a couple of them, and to sing with, you know, Hugh Pinero. I mean, we got to do Sweeney Todd together too, but singing, you know, as mother and son, even though I'm only a year older than him. You know, he just has one of those glorious voices that you know, to be that close to him and that amazing sound was thrilling every night.
Yeah. You know, you did 2 Broadway shows with Terrence Mann. You did The Addams Family and Tuck Everlasting. How much fun were those shows to do?
Very different, those 2 shows. But Terry is one of those people. I mean, you talk about how lucky I am to work with such amazing people. I mean, he's one of the best. And he's somebody that he works very differently than the way I work. I mean, as far as how consistent he is from night to night. He's one of those actors that loves to just like mix it up and try new things every night on stage. And for me, I'm one of those people that, like, once I find what works, I will do it as much the same as I can every night to give the audience the same performance that I gave opening night. But he loves the creativity of doing something. So I was always like coming out on stage with him. What's he gonna do? Where's Terry gonna go? And in a comedy like Addams Family, you know, that it really kept me on my toes. He was a lot of fun. In Tuck Everlasting, we didn't really have that much stage time together because he was like the bad guy and I was, you know, part of the Tuck family. But I love him. He's brilliant. And those shows were fun experiences. I wish Tuck Everlasting would have been a little more everlasting.
Yeah, me too. You know, you got to do Sister Act, Mother Superior, another feel-good show. You got to do the Thanksgiving Day Parade. You got to do that. How much fun was that? I mean, I love to talk to people, and you had good weather that day too, the year you did the Thanksgiving Day Parade.
We did. We didn't have good weather on the rehearsal day. I remember you know, they bring you out the day before to the street in front of Macy's to practice for the cameras so they can get everything lined up. And it was freezing and raining. And I remember all of us were like, and then that next morning was beautiful. So, I mean, I guess it's better that it was that way, not the other way around. But yeah, that was my only time doing the parade. I was so excited and got to see, you know, all these other people doing all their shows, you know, because we're all kind of in these little trailers waiting to go on. And of course I was all covered up because I was a nun. So all you could see was, you know, this part of my face, but you were kept warm, just so that's the nice thing about your outfit, as opposed to being out there and nothing but, you know, dance tights, some glittery dance tights, and a pair of shoes. Right. I wasn't a Rockette for sure. Yeah. I was warm. You know, you then created the role of Amy Semple McPherson in the musical Scandalous. I mean, talk about a tour de force performance. I mean, that was another role you started from the very beginning. Yeah. What did that role mean to you? You know, we worked so hard on that show for so many years. And Kathy Lee Gifford, who wrote the lyrics and the book, I love her a lot. And she was so determined to get that show to Broadway, and she made it happen, which was amazing. I wish it had lasted longer because it was one of those roles of a lifetime. I mean, the story of her real life is so fascinating. You know, she was the first sort of big star of that era, you know. Everyone around the world knew her name at that time. Yeah. So her life was fascinating, and the show was fascinating. I just wish it had lasted longer. It was sad to see it end so quickly, especially when you're having, you know, so much fun. But it was an exhausting one. Boy, that was the most time I ever spent on stage. I had so little time off stage. Anytime I was on stage, I was changing clothes. There was one song in the second act that George Hearn, I love, who played my father. He in the second act, he played this other evangelist, and he had a song in the second act, which was the only time I got to like sit down and have a drink of water. And then they cut the song. Now, no water for Carolee. No, got it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's a dream to work with him too. You know, I have to move on to Sweeney Todd. We're almost out of time. I told you these hours fly by really fast, but yeah, you're right. You know, I have to, you know, you took on the iconic role of Mrs. Lovett in that glorious recent immersive production of Sweeney Todd. I mean, what was it like living in the world of Sondheim and singing his songs? Okay, first of all, Stephen Sondheim came to our first performance. The man himself sitting, you know, because you saw the show, you know how small that was. It's like the whole space was about as big as my living room. And there he was sitting front and center, and you could see everybody in the theater. I mean, no way that I could not see him every time I was singing. And it was a crazy night because we had only had Norm Lewis, who was playing Sweeney at the time, and I had only had 3 weeks rehearsal to learn that. And so for him to be there the first night, I was just petrified. And then Norm lost his voice in the middle of the show, and the understudy, who had never been on, had to go on for the second act. And he did a great job. But I remember at intermission, I was like, don't worry, it's going to be great. You know, I got you. And I was like, what do you mean? I don't even know this show. I can't help you. You're on your own, man. It was one of those like shot out of a cannon moments. But luckily after that, we got to settle in, and what a cool production. It was just it's something I'll never forget, because I've never done anything that intimate before, where everyone's so close to you, no microphones, and like we were saying before, only 3 instruments playing that score, and only 8 of us in the cast. It was pretty thrilling. What a way. I mean, people finally want to work for Sondheim. You want a rehearsal period with him. You want him to give you those succinct little notes that you can say, this is the note he gave me, you know, and you're thrown into it right away. He's there for the first performance. Norm loses his voice. You're like, your mind must have been exploding saying, I'm staying focused, but this, like, is it a mess? Like, you know, totally, right? I wanted to crawl under that counter and just die. It was so stressful. I don't know how I got through that night. Luckily, he came back months later to see the show again when I think we were probably, a little bit better off at that point. But yeah, of course, he wasn't at any of the rehearsals. So that was the first time he was hearing any of us do anything. And he did give me a nice compliment afterwards and said, I always knew you could sing, but I didn't know you were so funny. And I was like, oh my God, Sondheim thinks I'm funny. So I can die now.
Those are the notes you want. Everybody said he'll give you like a sentence of something. And you're like, oh my gosh. Everybody compares them. Everyone. Oh. You should do a Sondheim dinner with everyone who's done, like, your ex-husband has done a lot of his shows. But, I'm sure Greg used to come home and say, look what he said today or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
What were the biggest, talk about challenges. The role, Dolly is such a big role. Mrs. Lovett's such a big role. But you love those kind of roles, don't you? Because they're so beautifully written.
I do. And I like being involved in, a big hunk of the show. It's hard for me when I only get to do a small bit, like in Finding Neverland. I had a nice little part, but I had an hour off stage and I went crazy. I don't like those kind of parts. I like being on stage a lot. I feel like I'm more part of the storytelling. And yeah, it's exhausting sometimes because you don't get a lot of breaks in those kind of parts, but you also just feel like you're, driving the whole thing forward. And I like to be in the driver's seat, I guess. Maybe I'm a control freak. Maybe that's what we're learning here.
No, but I love that though, because like you said, everybody said, I'd rather, like, Finding Neverland was another show you played, Mrs. Du Maurier. And the point is, you would come on, you'd come off. And I'm sure, Cheetah told me when she did Edwin Drood, it's like I had a lot of stage time off. It's more interesting to, like, you got to find those times to come back on again, as opposed to being involved in an entire show nonstop. Exhausting, right. But like you said, being in the driver's seat is so much easier than the start and stops.
Yeah, those small parts are hard because you can't ramp up. When you come back on, you have to be like in full sprint mode to keep up with everybody. So I find those more challenging in an odd way. Yeah.
You were saying you got to do Sweeney with Norm Lewis and with Hugh Pinero.
Yes, that's right. 6 months with Norm and then 6 months with Hugh. So lucky.
It must have been so great to go back with you after Lestat.
Yes. And, he and I did Les Mis together like 32 years ago when, we were both babies, but he was Marius and I was in the chorus. We didn't know each other that well, but we knew each other enough. And so to have like, something early in our careers and then something when we're, sort of on the tail end of our careers, it felt full circle in a way. It was really nice.
Like I told you in the beginning, you have this incredible career. So what is the best bit of advice that you've been given, either personally or professionally, that you live by?
Wow. I guess when I first started out, the thing that I usually pass on to people, someone once told me that you should never count yourself out, go to every audition that you can, because you shouldn't decide ahead of time that you're not right for something or not old enough for something or not tall enough, whatever it is. Don't count yourself out. Go to every audition, because as we were saying before, auditioning is the hardest part. And so the more you do it, the more relaxed and experienced you'll feel, and it won't be so stressful. But also, you never know when you walk in the room if they're going to find a new way to fit you into their show or find a different project that you might be right for. So go to as many auditions as you can and get as prepared as you can and just try to let it go when you walk in the door. I guess that's the best advice that I got, that I try to keep remembering.
That's beautiful. My final question is, what have you learned about yourself during this pandemic and this stay at home and shutdown time?
I've learned that I really like to eat carbohydrates. And it's a little dangerous because I've got a cabinet full of them. It's hard, it's when you're at least for me, when I'm bored, I like to eat, and it's comforting, you know, when you're stressed. I just love some bread, some pasta, some cereal with milk. I mean, those things make me feel better. And so much of what we're going through right now is just like, it's stressful and isolating, and, you know, nothing makes me feel better like a big bowl of carbohydrates.
I think there's millions
about myself.
Yeah, there's millions and millions of people who feel the same exact way, who are now giving you the thumbs up. Carolee, I have known you since the early days, like I said, in New York. I have been there for many of your incredible milestones, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, not just for the joy that you have given us, for all of us on stage, but just being your friend and just always seeing you. I mean, this has been a dream for you to sit with me today.
Oh, thanks, Richie. And, you know, people should know that watch you, that you are just the kindest, sweetest, most supportive guy that you could ever want to encounter, especially in those situations where you're on a red carpet and everyone's yelling things at you. And I see your face and it's like a beacon. I just know that you're going to be kind and loving in those moments. So thank you for that.
Well, I love you, and everybody else out there. Remember, Carolee's new series is A Killer Party, a murder mystery musical where she co-stars with a killer cast. Just visit akillerpartymusical.com. Everybody, until we see you when the theater comes back bigger and better than ever, stay safe. Carolee, I adore you. Take care, everyone.